You are listening to Practical and Woo by Mindset and Manifest. I'm your host, Eden, and I'm so excited to offer you this bonus series called the CBRDBR series. This side series is a forum for us to meet interesting guests with unique perspectives and gifts discovered from lived experiences that are both practical and woo. Let's dive in. On this episode of the CBRDBR series, I'd like to introduce you to Amanda Kate. Amanda Kate is a kinesiologist, author, coach, and speaker. Her mission is to help her clients regain their vitality by helping them smash through their internal glass ceiling to find new levels of health, prosperity, and abundance in their lives. Amanda Kate shares her journey of seeing a kinesiologist and how that helped her on her own path towards wellness and healing, an experience that forever changed her. In her work, she gives permission to her clients to learn how past traumatic experiences can be used as a healing tool in their lives to propel them forward into a deeper understanding of both themselves and others. Hello, Amanda. Thank you so much for joining me on the CBRDBR series by Practical and Woo. I am so excited to have this conversation with you. How are you today?
I'm doing amazingly, and I'm so excited to chat with you again. It was just amazing last time, so I can't wait to weave some magic with you.
I love the way you say that, weave some magic. And in particular, I'm very interested in having you share your story about how you became a kinesiologist and that journey from working away from doing what you thought you should be doing and living essentially for other people, moving into this soul-centric work and allowing your magic to light up the world. So feel free to dive in and let's get it rolling.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think, although my story is, unique because it's mine, it is from the work I've done with others. It is such a typical story. It is just completely not unique at all. The only unique part is that I was the main character. Mind you, I felt like I was playing supporting actress for most of my life in my own life. So, slightly different. But, I was white, Church of England raised, middle class, got good grades, behaved, was expected to toe the line, was expected to be a good girl, was expected to follow rules. And there were a lot of expectations placed on behaviors and on just demeanor, everything. We seem to have this quite narrow band of behavior to work within. And for the most part, I did. But every time there was a wobble, it was, you got yanked into line pretty fast. So I got good grades, went to university, got, good grades there, went to work for my dad for a while, and then I went traveling with my sister and went to the UK. And, again, it was pretty normal experience. It was out and probably partying too much. It was the first time I really felt like I had an opportunity to spread my wings. And so I did go off the rails a little bit, there was all sorts of partying. And those who spent, the early 2000s in London will understand, what that entailed. And then I met a man, things were all right, but we got engaged after 7 months together and then married after another 7 months together because of my visa issues and him being British and me not being. And we ended up, two beautiful children, beautiful home, international travel, and I was miserable. I hated it. I thought I had seasonal affective disorder. My daughter was a challenging child. And so, she would have 3-4 hour tantrums over the smallest little things. And life was just hard. When my ex-husband wasn't, or he was husband at the time, wasn't with us, the three of us, my son, my daughter, and myself, just had a fantastic time catching up with friends and doing stuff. But every time he was around, it was just eggshells and constantly changing goalposts, and nothing was ever good enough, and constant criticism, and just there was always something wrong with what I was doing. And one day what I was doing would be praised, and then the next day it would be shamed and bullied and condemned. And so I ended up just this big ball of nerves. And so I enjoyed it when he wasn't at home. And I used to say to my friends, I'm a single mum, but I occasionally have, or I'll have a paycheck coming in, and I occasionally have a husband at home. You know, he'd come in at night after the kids are in bed most of the time, and he'd leave before the kids got up in the morning to do his long day of work in London. And it was a relatively lonely existence being over the other side of the world from my family with no real support. And yet, you know, I thought it was normal. I thought the way I was living was completely and utterly normal. And in 2011, we had a chance to move back to Australia. And he said, I don't want to be close to your family if we can't be close to mine. So we moved sort of 10 hours from where my family were. And I ended up at the beginning of 2013 needing 3-hour naps in the afternoon, getting sicker and sicker, and not quite understanding why. The lethargy, the just not wellness. I do not know. It wasn't like a sick. It was just I was not well. And I was suffering for 13 days a month with my menstrual cycle. So there were 6 days around ovulation, 7 days around bleed, which again, if anyone out there is having that issue, that's not normal. Just to put a pin in that one. And all of these things were going on, and I could not work it out. And doctors were going, well, blood tests are fine. We don't know what's wrong with you. I'd be going, but there's got to be an answer. And it was really when a gynecologist said to me, well, you've tried everything, so here's some antidepressants. They'll, you know, the same way that we just don't use the pill for, you know, contraception. There's other reasons we put people on the pill. It's kind of the same with antidepressants. So here. And it felt like a real brush off. It felt like, well, I don't know what else to do with you. You're too young for a hysterectomy, and that's it. Full stop, end of story, done. And I'm going, you're kidding me. Like, this cannot be the only answer for me. And that's really when I started going, I need to find alternatives. And I went down the natural therapies route. So I started seeing a naturopath who was amazing, got me off gluten straight away, started reducing the inflammation in my body, which obviously made a massive difference. I've been pretty much off processed sugar since then, apart from the occasional wines, but still not really into those, you know, sugars and processed foods and all the rest of it. So I've got a pretty clean diet. That did make a big difference, but things were still getting worse. And 2015 was just a horrible, horrible year. I felt like a broken shell of a human being. I ended up getting a mental health care plan to go and see a psychologist because I knew that I was so broken that I needed to fix myself to save my marriage, which again tells you the kind of mindset I had. It was all my fault. But again, I'd been told that for so long. It's all your fault. You're the one that's got the problems. I'm okay. I'm perfect. There is nothing wrong with me. So it has to be you. And having been told that for so many years, I truly believed it. I was the broken one. I was the sick one. I was the one not coping. I was the reactive one. And when I rang the receptionist to book in with the psychologist, she said to me, you know, we can't get you in for another month. So, you know, you sound like you're under a bit of stress. What's going on for you? So I gave her, again, the socially acceptable response, which is we've just emigrated. My husband's unhappy in his job. It's the first time he's lived away from his family. My son's being bullied at school. My daughter, you know, needs a lot of emotional support. And in that, then it was interesting. She said to me, and who's got your back? And I crumbled. I was like, in all of the doctor's visits and specialist visits. And, I went to see an endocrinologist. I went to see a rheumatologist. I think it's a rheumatologist, whatever deals with rheumatoid arthritis, because they thought I was getting that. I went to go and see the gynecologist, like all of these different doctors, and not one person asked me about my support structures, about my relationships, about who was there to actually be part of my community. And I broke down and I was just going, nobody. Like, I'm holding up this house of cards and I'm crumbling, so it's crumbling. And it's all my fault, basically. And she said, look, you sound like you're under a lot of stress. How about you come and see this kinesiologist? And I was like, don't know what that is, but I'm willing to try anything. And that session changed my life, because it was only a couple of days later that I could get in with this kinesiologist rather than a month or so later. And she said to me in that first session, you have no idea how emotionally abused you are, do you? And I was like, I don't understand, And over the next number of months, immediately I saw it in a few other relationships that I had. But it took me another 4 months to see it in my ex-husband, and then a further 4 months to actually get out of the marriage. And it wasn't a get out of the marriage as though, yes, I'm choosing to do this. It was, I knew I could not stay. So I had no other choice. I did not feel brave. I did not feel like I had my shit together. I did not feel like I was going to be able to do it in any, graceful way. But there was no other choice, because I knew that, and it probably sounds a bit dramatic, but I felt like I was dying. And I know now that that was just my soul being crushed. And so through that journey, I ended up starting to study kinesiology 6 months after I had my first session, literally to the day. And then it was another, I think, 2 or 3 months after that I got up the courage to tell him it was over. And, I remember my psychologist and kinesiologist within 2 or 3 days of each other said to me, look, we are helping you and you are making, great progress. But what you're missing, you need to go home and look up narcissistic personality disorder. And neither of them said any more than that, but both of these came, I think one was on the Tuesday, one was on the Thursday. And that Thursday night was when I told him, we're done. He got home and I was like, we're finished. I cannot do this. And it was like, when I was reading it, I'm going, oh my God, like, that's everything that's happened to me. And that was shocking in itself, because I had thought that those behaviors were just how people treated each other. I thought they were so normal. I didn't recognize it as gaslighting or stonewalling or all of those terms, the same way that I didn't actually realize I had anxiety until a few years back. I was like, oh, that's what anxiety is. I've had that my whole life. People have asked me if I've got anxiety, and I'll go, no, because I didn't know what it was and how it felt in my body. And so it's like I've just had all these light bulb moments of going, oh, that's what people are talking about. Oh, I get it now. Like, this is what narcissism is. This is what it means to be in a relationship with them. And I guess since then, the last, it was 7 years ago that I left my marriage. Since then, it has been diving deep, going within, working out, I guess, the trauma patterns that laid down the pathway for me to expect that in a relationship, for me to accept that in a relationship, and for me to not recognize that kind of abuse in a relationship. I had to really look deep at all of those bits within myself and work with external people, because as much as you learn this stuff, you can't do it on yourself, because you cannot delve into your own subconscious. You can to an extent, but you need other people who've got different perspectives and different tools to, I guess, come at you from different angles for you to be able to heal it. And I have worked with, I can't even tell you how many different modalities and practitioners and all sorts to, one, understand what other modalities are out there and how they work on the body and how they can help, but also to really find out what is going on under the surface for me and to try and align my conscious and unconscious minds as much as possible. And to heal those patterns that I know I've passed on to my children. You know, I look at the trauma that they have seen and experienced from me staying with their dad so long. And, you know, I just hope that they earn enough money to pay for the therapy I've paid for, really, and to work with the kind of people I've worked with.
Wow, what a powerful, powerful journey and share, and what sounds like an incredible homecoming that you went on,
Mm,
learning that you are a main character of your story, and yet you
yeah.
were expecting or allowing yourself to be treated as if you were a secondary character in your own
Yeah.
life. That is so common of us to
Mm,
do.
it is.
Then recognizing that there really isn't a fix. Like people, like, right? I remember the beginning of my spiritual journey, like you are so hell-bent on fixing yourself. I am
Yeah.
broken, I have to fix it. What
Yeah.
next? I remember I used to like grasp at my like guides, counselors, coaches, like
Mm,
what's my homework? I'm
yeah.
gonna do it.
How do I fix this,
How do
damn it?
I
And if I
do
double down on this, I am going to get an A plus, the same way I got an A plus at, you know. Because I used to think that my mum said to me, relationships are hard. And I'm like, well, I am acing this then. Because, you know, I just thought I was doing it really, really well because relationships are supposed to be hard. Therefore, I am getting an A plus because this is insane. And so you're right, it gets into must fix myself, I am broken. And I think the most powerful thing I recognized, and this is what I tell my clients who feel the same way, is you are not broken. You are under emotional distress. Because I don't actually believe that there are things like, you know, I guess mental health disorders as chemical imbalances. I think it is all stemming from emotional distress and trauma, whether it be in this lifetime, whether it be generational, whether it be, you know, whatever it is coming from those trauma patternings. It is coming from a disconnection from either the community around you or from your own soul.
Mhm.
And as we heal that connection, because, you know, people used to say to me, you're depressed. And I'd say no, because again, it was this list of symptoms. And I'm like, yeah, I've got a few of them, but isn't that just life? Now that I look back, I'm going, yeah, I probably was. I was depressed. I was anxious. I was having all these issues. But again, one, there was the stigma around the labels of these things. Two, I just thought I was broken and not humaning very well. And I thought that everybody else had their shit together more than I did.
Everybody thinks that, right? How has your belief system changed, and how do you view yourself now after undergoing that whole collective journey, almost like standing on the mountain peak, looking back at
Mm.
how far you've come? What is
Oh,
what has changed? What do you feel like? What do you believe?
do you know, I think it's literally it can be summed up in that word of everything. Everything has changed. There is nothing the same. And it was interesting. My very first kinesiologist became a teacher towards the middle and end of my kinesiology diploma and international diploma. So we spent a lot of time as teacher and student as well as kinesiologist and client. And it was fascinating. I still remember standing in certain classes with her and she'd be teaching something. I'm like, I remember this coming up in one of our sessions. And she's like, yeah. And often, if she was teaching me on the weekend and I had a class in the middle of the week, a technique would then come up that we were learning on the weekend. And it was just mind blowing. But I remember saying to her at one point, I said, do you remember me walking into your clinic? And she's like, yeah. And she said, I cannot tell you the difference. It's insane. You're a different person, completely different person. And it was interesting because I used to laugh with her that the first thing I said to her was, I am so broken and I need to fix myself to save my marriage. It was the first thing I said to her when she asked, why are you here?
What would you say now? Like, what would you say now?
Look, at the time, I believed that that was the truth.
Hmm.
And I did feel broken. I did feel like I was the problem. And so there is so much truth in it. Now I see that it was completely skewed and bizarre, but that's because I have all of these tools and all of this knowledge. But at the time, that was the perfect thing to say. now if people come and say things like that to me, I can explain that they're not broken, that they are a result of unresourceful behaviors, of emotional conditioning, of trauma patterning, of nervous system responses that are keeping them alive and keeping them safe, but that are not serving them to their highest. And that's the part I think that I can see clearly with hindsight is my soul was calling out for change. I wasn't sick because my body was unwell. I had been wound up like a spring and wound tighter and tighter and tighter. So I would explode every now and then. But there was nowhere else for that tension to go. And it was not physical. I think probably 1 or 2% of my issues are physical. The rest were emotional, psychological, energetic, spiritual, relational, social. It was all of those aspects of myself that were slowly dying
Mhm.
and being held so tightly and contained in a space that it was never meant to be in. But I never had the courage to do anything about the intuition and the messages that I was receiving. I would receive the messages, and in hindsight, I'd go, oh my God, I knew that that would happen, or I knew that this would happen, or I could see that coming. But it was always in that hindsight, and I never had the courage to act on it because I didn't trust myself. And that was one of the other keys that I learned is that my intuition is usually pretty spot on. And yet, now I have the courage to act on it, whereas before I didn't. And that's changed everything as well.
Mm.
And so I think understanding, and this is why I'm so obsessed with, studying and learning, is because when I first started with kinesiology, it was like this door was opened to this incredible world of healing and mind, body, spirit connection and connection to the divine, and so much that was calling me home. And every time I learned something, it was like I was remembering, not learning it.
Hmm.
And having that experience was in itself bizarre because I'm like, I can't be remembering this stuff because I've never learned it before. But that's where I started to understand that whole past life aspect and, you know, this connection to the collective conscience. And understanding that then made me go, oh my God, what else is there to learn? Like I've learned this tiny wedge of what's available out there. And that's where that eternal, student kind of comes in, is because the more I know, the more I realize I don't know, and the more I want to know.
That's so beautiful. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for sharing all of this, Amanda. I'm hearing so much wisdom coming through about learning how to trust yourself, really connecting back to your soul, finding your soul calling, essentially allowing it to bring yourself back
Mm.
home. I'm also hearing and feeling that you underwent a lot of this journey, this pain, so a lot of hard stuff, right?
Yeah.
And you recognize the importance of being able to reflect back to the people that you're serving, to your clients, that what they're going through is not them being broken, is not them
Mm.
needing to be fixed, and that it's
Yeah.
really this magnificent journey that is allowed to unfold. I
Mm.
would love to give you an opportunity to explain what is kinesiology and
Mm.
how does it help? How did it help you as a modality?
So it's one of those modalities that is a blend of, I guess, the Western science and the Eastern wisdom. So we do look at the traditional Chinese medicine, acupressure points and meridian systems. We also look at the chakra systems, auric fields. So what we are looking at is, your subconscious isn't between your ears. It is in every cell and every electron of your being. We are
Mhm.
basically big electromagnetic balls. It's just that some of us is more solid than the other. And everything is energy. So the way that kinesiology works is we use manual muscle testing. So we actually, press on arms, legs, wherever we're testing those muscles to read the electrical signals that are going through the body. So if, something is not stressful, the electrical signal will just go through the muscle and the muscle will hold its tone. When it is causing stress, that signal falters. And so the muscle tone changes and it will come across, some people call it a weak muscle test. But when I've worked with a lot of PTs and people who go to the gym, you don't want to use words like weak and strong, because then then it becomes a really big, I'm going to hold this there. And there's a bit of a fight that ensues. But it's like the muscle tone isn't congruent, and therefore the muscle will have bounce or have give or collapse under light pressure, very light pressure. And so we use that muscle tone. And the way it works online is very similar. It's just that I muscle test on myself. So I tune in the same way that we're tuning into one another now to have a conversation. I tune into, my client's radio station is what I call it. And then I get my energetic blanket and throw it over their energy field so that I'm able to read what's going on whilst tuning into them, but I muscle test on myself. And those muscle tests basically allow us to bring what's in the subconscious mind through the conscious mind so that we get an awareness of what's going on under the surface. We find out then what we call the causal time. So when that problem started, when it was, I guess when it became a problem, the first time or the first major time it really took root, because sometimes the first experience is not necessarily when it actually takes root. It might be the second or third that all of a sudden this becomes a problem. We find the emotional resonance that's stuck there. And then we, I guess, work out the stories that are then linked to that emotion, to that event, and how it is relevant to today. So that's the key bit as well, is how is this event from the past influencing your behavior, your actions, your emotions, your feelings, the sensations in your body, the lack of wellness, whatever it is today? Because clearly there's a link. And sometimes that link is it feels really tenuous because consciously it doesn't make sense. But once you find out that underlying emotion and you go, oh my goodness, I would have never linked those two things together, but this is kind of the root cause and this is the externalization of those behaviors. And then what we're able to do is change that vibrational frequency. So we use different vibrational tools, whether it be acupressure points or different body points, whether it be, essences, crystals, something with a different vibrational frequency. Often I am called to use sound, which is one of the highest vibration I guess, techniques and resonance, like things that create harmonic resonance within the body are the words I'm probably trying to find. And so then you're changing that vibrational pattern so that it doesn't vibrate at the same frequency as your body. So it becomes less of an issue. And what I find then is you start to notice that, I remember some of my sessions, it would be 3 weeks later and I'd go, I'm not doing that thing anymore. Hang on, when did I stop doing, whatever it was that was creating issue in my life? And I'd trace it back and I'd go, oh, that was my kinesiology session. Or oh, I was at school that weekend and we worked on this, or this. And it's really fascinating because once it becomes not a problem anymore, it goes. So we often forget about it, and that's why I take copious notes during client sessions, because they'll come in and they'll go, I've got these killer headaches and I've got this issue and I've got that issue. And then you go, well, next session it'll be, how are your headaches? And they'll go, what headaches? Well, last time you came in, because once pain is gone, or once that discomfort is gone, or once that behavior is gone, it's no longer an issue anymore. So people forget about it very, very quickly.
Yeah.
And I find that the people who stick with kinesiology get very, very good at that self reflection. They get very, very good at that self responsibility. They get incredibly skilled and honed at looking back, going, oh, they were the changes that happened. Oh my goodness, I get it now, because they're noticing the difference in behavior. And so when I stand here now and I look back to who I was 7, 8 years ago, there is no resonance to that person in so many ways. It's like a complete and utter stranger to me, because vibrationally, I'm a whole new being.
Mm.
I'm not carrying the weight of the world with me and the weight of all of my experience and trauma with me everywhere I go.
Mhm. Isn't that amazing how that
Oh,
works? I
it's
had
phenomenal.
the thought the other day too. It's like when you're in the thick of it. So I really resonate with your experiences and stories. I took a different path to a similar, not similar, but resonant,
Yeah.
awakening or journey through a whole host of different modalities. But today we're highlighting kinesiology, so I'm going to make sure to just highlight kinesiology today. But the other day I was thinking like I feel so different, and there's an
Mm,
imprint left of that version of
yeah.
yourself that you were, where you can actually be in that comparison or that
Mm,
contrast, where I was like, wow, I still remember how I felt, but I'm not experiencing that
yeah.
vibrational energy or that those sensations in my body. And that brings so much gratitude. And so to
Mm,
me, like, this is an invitation, I think, for us to start talking about, you may feel like absolute garbage and like feel like it's never ever going to end, or it'll never be different and it's just the same. And then it takes a moment for a shift to occur, and
yeah.
then a compounding of continuing to prioritize,
Yes.
right, that journey. And then you get to have the gift of being able to
Mm,
look back and say, wow, I feel so much different, and it feels more pleasurable. I don't want to say better
mm.
because there's no better or worse,
No.
but you know what I mean? Like
There's a there's a there's an ease to it.
it feels
It's an
easy,
easier existence.
flowy. Yeah.
Yeah. But even when you're faced with the tumultuous times, it feels easier.
Yeah.
Or I know it certainly does for me. And I love the way you describe it there, that compounding, because I think so often in healing, people promise you these quantum leaps of change and, we're going to hack your nervous system and we're going to do that. And it's all just marketing bullshit. We cannot hack the nervous system. It takes time to repattern the nervous system. And to do that, you need to feel safe. If you do not feel safe, we cannot repattern the nervous system, because the first thing you
Yes.
need is safety. And
Safety.
so, but you're right. What I noticed for me, it was those little 1% changes that became staples in my life that compounded like interest to create those quantum shifts. It was those little tiny practices, getting rid of gluten out of my diet, getting rid of sugar out of my diet, getting rid of dairy out of my diet. And now that's not for everyone, of course, and it feels really more than 1% when you're doing it. But those changes made such a difference to my physical body. Likewise, concentrating on my breath, becoming more present, taking my regular time in nature, doing those little 1% habits compound so massively over time. Because if you think you're walking on a path and you change your trajectory by 1 degree every day, in 3 weeks you're on a completely different path. You are 21 degrees difference from where you were. And that's the bit that I think people want to rush. Now, somebody once said to me, it takes half as long as it took you to get unwell to get better. And I used to go, no, don't tell me that. I don't want to be working that long at this. But it's interesting. I had I divorced 7 years ago, and I was in the marriage for 13 years, but with him for 14 years. And it was amazing. At the end of last year, we signed some paperwork that completely cuts our ties. And I was like, oh my God, that's crazy. This is the seventh anniversary, and this is exactly halfway,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of the length of time it took me to get sick. And I entered this year going, I actually feel healed. And I know that sounds crazy because there is always more work to do. But I said it to my mentor, and I said, I know this is going to sound really crazy and it's not meant to. And I know you're going to understand the way that I'm saying this. This is not coming from ego. I said to her, I feel healed. I don't feel like that trauma is informing me anymore. And she said, yeah, because you've done a hell of a lot of work. And you're right. And I said, I feel like now it's about expansion, it's about growth, it's about deepening that connection to the divine, it's about taking what I have done and helping other people to, walk their paths, wherever that may be, too, guiding them, facilitating. I don't like to sort of talk about it as healing because we do our own healing. We can go into whatever modality session we want, and the changes will only stick if we make the changes stick.
Mm-hmm.
I remember my girlfriend, she's a hypnotherapist, and she went into a hypnotherapy session to start smoking. Stop smoking. She did to start. That was the wrong. But as soon as she walked out, she went, I'm going to prove that this is wrong. And she lit up a cigarette. Now, she had free will choice and she recognized it. She is now a hypnotherapist, which is, quite funny. But she said it was because she made that choice to prove that that was not going to work for her. And yet, then the next time she went in, she's like, seriously, I just wasted all that money just to be petulant and kind of walk outside and, try and prove that it didn't work. And then the next time she went, I've paid all this money, this is going to work. And she never smoked again. And she recognized that behavior pattern, that, the rebellious teenager going, I'm going to prove to you this doesn't work. And you can sort of see that difference in there. People can come into session with a real desire to heal and a desire to change and a desire to move away from the pain that they're in. And they are the ones who are going to take that work out. They're going to implement it in their daily life, because we can only affect people when we are in session with them. We can't affect them when they're in their daily life, when the daily stresses are coming at them, when the shit's hitting the fan and things are going all over the place and they feel like they're out of control.
Mm-hmm.
We're not there with them in those moments.
Mm-hmm.
They need to do the work for those bits to change.
100%. And I know for me, there's been a couple of frameworks that I've been able to have come across my path that have really helped in those moments of transformation, right?
Yeah.
When you are in conflict or a downward spiral or whatever it may be, it is so easy to fall into your old nervous system habits
Yeah.
and patterns that it takes like almost the strength of a superhuman who can stop a full freight train like at times.
Yeah.
Right? It's like
No.
I will respond, not react, right? Like, so I remember that in some of my I see a Gestalt psychotherapist.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I, for a while, was on the path of becoming a Gestalt psychotherapist as well, right? Like, as you do. And so in session, she would often say, like, it's about responding, not reacting. And that didn't make sense to me when I was in the thick of it.
Yeah.
Until I found some like incredible breathwork frameworks or some incredible mindset frameworks where you can call upon an acronym, like all of these different, things that are floating out there in the ether, a lot of which I will eventually talk about here, but I want to again highlight kinesiology today. Yeah, it's like,
but I think what you say there is beautiful point. You haven't gotten all of your tools into where you are through one modality, and neither have I.
Yep.
And so I think that is also something that's really important. In 2017, I did 26 weekends of school. So that was balancing people and being balanced, as well as, you learn the technique and then you work with a partner and you swap over. So it was 26 weekends of that happening. Plus, I was seeing 5 or 6 different kinesiologists. Some were
Mm.
regular and some were just one off here and there to deal with certain issues. I also was seeing my naturopath who also did EFT type stuff.
Yep.
I also worked with, I think I was still going with a chiropractor at that point, like all of these different people working together. So
Together.
I think it's really about finding the right practitioners who do give you those frameworks, who can help anchor that stuff in your body, as well as somatically clear it from the body, clear out those, the somatized emotions are like the stuck ones. They're the ones that are actually being held in your body. And so somatic therapies clear those energetic blockages, or those, I kind of look at it, if you think about an orchestra and you've got, some blocked instruments, your woodwind's got a, something stuck in it, and you've got out of tune instruments over here, you're tuning it up. And so it's really about finding that tune within the body again and getting the instruments back in tune so that they can work together. And I don't think any one modality works to do the whole lot. I've done archetypal life coaching, which includes, we call it matrix therapy, which is the Gestalt, clearing of emotions. I've done 3 modules of TBM. I've done my Reiki. I've done my kinesiology and my
Yes.
kinesiopractic. Because the more, what I said at the beginning, the more I know, the more I know I don't know, and the more I want to know.
Yeah, for sure. And it's not a one size fits all. Like
No.
for every single person that you go to who has accomplished what you want to accomplish, they're uniquely themselves. And so
Yeah.
something that might have worked for them may not work for you. And it might not
Yeah.
be a one size fits all. And I find a lot of people can get quite disheartened. That's like,
Mm.
well, it worked for them. And then they go
Yeah.
into a triggered space where it's like, well, I'm apparently not good at, and then, no, it's
Yeah.
about that trust. You were talking about that trust of yourself, that flow of like really discovering and uncovering what is right for you, what works for you. If
Mm.
I recall from your powerful origin story at the beginning of this
Mm.
podcast, you mentioned that you were booking an appointment for something else and they didn't have that space for you. And
Not for
so
a month. Yeah.
they instead booked you into kinesiology, and that's
Mm.
like literally the moment that like really
Yeah.
started you on the path, right? It's like those divinely
Yeah.
aligned invitations that we
Mm.
can or can't pick up, and it's really that inner authority that kind of is like, yes, this is right for me, no, that's not
Mm.
right for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even exercising, I find
Oh, absolutely. You
like
know, Yeah, I think what you say there is absolutely perfect. People spend more time, deciding what kind of shoes they're going to buy or what kind of car they're going to buy than they do the people who are going to help them with their spiritual, mental, and emotional health. And you go, hang on, that's a bit weird. But as you say, there's no one size fits all. Who worked beautifully for me because of my trauma patterning may not work for you with yours. Because I resonate with someone, it's the same way that, sometimes you meet your friend's best friend and you go, really, those two? Like, we don't resonate with everyone. We're not going to. And so it's going to be the same with healers, with practitioners. For me to be working with 5 or 6 different kinesiologists through 1 year, plus all the different people I was training with, you go, well, that's a lot of different energies. And certainly 2017 was an anomaly year because of the amount of study and what I was doing, but I also knew that I was on this fast track. I
Mhm,
know that the universe was conspiring with me to give me this insanely incredible boost because I am here to help other people.
mhm.
And they needed, once I found the path, I mean, they've been trying to get me on the path for years. It was like, wake up, wake up, wake up. But I think what you're saying is right. It's the same way that, I mean, I love yoga and Pilates, but some people think that's boring and don't want to do it. I went to the gym this morning before our conversation with my partner, lifting weights. again, some people go, oh, no way. And yet they work for me. I love boxing. Now, some people will go, boxing, and so, again, depending on what you like, depending on what suits your body, depending on what you're built for, and depending on the practitioner you get. Because I've been to some practitioners where I'm like, I don't understand why you're supposedly as good as you are, or why people say you're as good as you are. But it's not because they're not, it's just that they didn't work for me
Hmm.
because I need something different. And I think that's it. Don't write off a whole modality just because you found one person that you didn't resonate with. People will go, oh no, I don't like kinesiology because I had a, terrible experience. And you go, well, hang on a minute. There's all of these different people out there, and having one bad experience. I had a session with a hypnotherapist and it was really terrible. And yet two of the most incredible people I know, both hypnotherapists, and I love their sessions. And
Yeah.
so
No,
again,
it's like it's totally that sense of like not allowing yourself to feel almost like I remember a lot of things that, in the shoulds category, and a lot of
mm,
people are like this. The shoulds just are not working for me. So I must be, that's why I'm broken. That's
mm,
why, I can't have these things that other people have. But it's just no, like if your life feels different, let it feel different and
mm,
find things to meet you
yeah,
where you are. I heard you talk a lot about this call from the universe, and they wanted to wake me up a lot, and
yeah,
I didn't listen, and I think that happens for people as well, where you
yeah,
try to push away spirituality because of the woo-woo nature of it, right?
yeah,
And it
yeah,
will fall back right in square into your lap again. So what
yeah.
is your opinion on tapping into your intuition and trusting yourself and trusting that these strange coincidences are what they are?
Well, I think, as I said to you before, hindsight is one of the things that really anchored in how much I guess, saw it from very, very early on. I was called around that sort of 15, 16, 17, bit to the tarot and to some of this. But again, with the religious background, that's part of the occult. That is channeling the devil. That is peddling Satan. That is, all of the things. And so it became so shamed
Mhm.
that, and it's through a lack of awareness, a lack of understanding, and also by people I find it hilarious now who played cards a lot. And if anyone knows, normal playing cards were based on the tarot so that people could still do tarot readings without being called witches. And so normal playing cards were based on that. And so I find that quite amusing these days, that they play so many card games and yet they were so anti tarot, which is quite funny. But then again, through my 20s, I had a number of times where there were these little inklings of there's something else, there's something deeper. But again, I pushed it away because that wasn't what people like us did. And it was, you're not a hippie, you're not fringe, you're not this, you're white, you're middle class, you're straight down the line. That's where we had to stay, was straight down that line. And there was all of that stuff. I mean, I remember when I first got a tarot deck, I hid it in my bottom drawer so my husband wouldn't find it. I was so afraid of what he would say that I hid it in a bottom drawer. I mean, now I think about it, it's mind blowing. But, right from the very beginning, I had these red flags about my ex husband. But because he was telling me it was my fault, it was my misperception, it was, all on me, and he was very convincing, I would then alter and change the way that I was seeing it because I clearly believed I was in the wrong. Now, every single one of those red flags, and there were a lot. I I kind of think of, when there's Chinese New Year and they just hang red flags everywhere because it's so prosperous. Like that's what my relationship was like, but way less fun. Um, there was
Man,
just this sea of red flags.
oh.
And and now I'm like, oh my God, how many opportunities did I have to get out? But I felt stuck. And again, it's that you stay together for the children. And all of this story and all of this external influence was pushing me again to be in a box I don't belong in, but the box that they thought I should be in and that they thought I belonged in. And so every time I tried to get out of that box, I was shoved back in it and had the lid nailed shut until I managed to again prise some of the nails off. But then it was like, okay, we'll put more nails in, we'll put more nails in until you cannot get out. And me leaving the marriage, like I say, it didn't feel like a choice. It didn't feel like a do I stay or do I go? It got to a point where I cannot stay in this space. This is not safe for me or for my children. This is not an okay place for anyone to live, including my ex-husband. He deserved better. I wasn't an angel through that process. Nobody is when relationships are that toxic. Nobody is. And so there were all of these things building and building. And the intuition started to come in with that recognition of, I didn't listen to that gynecologist. I threw those antidepressants in the bin. I think I took 2 or 3 of them and I went, this doesn't feel right. It was the first time. I still remember, I can see the scene in my mind where I took one and I went, literally, what the hell are you doing? And I threw the box in the bin and I thought, oh my God, I've gone against the doctor's orders. That's not what people like us do. And there was that bit of, but I went, no, this isn't the right thing for you. And that was really one of those big changes, those big moments in my life that really makes me go, I trusted myself for the first time. The universe can send whatever messages it likes through you, but until you start listening, trusting it, and acting on it, you don't move forward.
Mm-hmm.
And then the more I trusted it and the more I acted on it, the more I would get those pulls. And now some of the pulls I get feel really crazy at times. And yet when I act on them and when I do it, I'm like, oh my God, that's why I was shown that. And every step along the path has been like that. It has been, why am I being shown this? Why have I got this weird pull to do this, that, or the other? And all of a sudden, something will shift and change. And you go, oh, okay, got it.
Mm-hmm. One of the greatest skills that I can see but by the way, I have chills everywhere. So thank you for showing up so wholly and authentically. I can see a thread of really taking that time to witness the common repeating patterns in your life. That's the biggest thing, I think. That awareness of like, okay, so if I am creating my reality or if something is trying to get my attention, it doesn't matter how you enter into the conversation. It's that like little light bulb of there's something that keeps happening instead of being a first person experiencer of it forever. There's a third person version that comes on, this witness of, okay, let me actually take the time to figure out what I am being asked to see here. Yeah. For me, that has been one of my biggest, I think, gifts in being able to navigate a variety of things that I've experienced in my life. And I'm hearing that common thread. And I really wanted to take the time to highlight that for the sake of this weaved magical conversation that we're creating here.
And I think that's a beautiful thing, because even with the crappy things that were happening in my life, I was noticing the patterns and I knew when the blow-ups were about to come. That's how, we could maybe hold it together for, at first it was about 3 months we could hold it together for. So we'd get along okay for about 3 months and then we would have this massive blow-up. And funnily enough, it almost always, and I only again know this now, it usually happened around those equinoxes and solstices, which is hilarious now that I understand, the changing of the seasons. And then it became shorter and shorter periods until it was literally daily blow ups. But I would notice there would be patterns. And so as we were together for I'd feel it coming. Okay, I've held it together this long. This is, I'm starting to lose a grip. This is going, it's going to blow type thing. So even it's not just been with the good patterns that I've noticed it, it was also with those crappy ones, with those ones that were not safe and were not nourishing and quite often traumatizing. And I think there is something to witnessing what you are having repeating in your life for you to then be able to make those changes.
Oh my goodness. So yes, we had a little bit of a technical difficulty, and in true online technological fashion, Amanda and I are going to kind of regroup back into our
Yes.
conversation. And it's like a tapestry, right? We said we were
Yeah,
making a magical weave
exactly.
tapestry.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
s- what I sense that we were talking about was that third party
Oh, yes, the witnessing. Yeah.
witness of yourself is one of the keys of
Mm,
mastery, of being able to
yeah.
continuously be your own advocate, even when you're angry at yourself. I know for me,
Mm,
I had a war in my mind, but yet
mm,
there was a dominant version that was like, keep going, try
yeah.
this. And there's just keep trying things. And
Mm,
eventually, at least for me, I know that for me, I was able to find things that worked
mm,
and that stuck and that grew me along the journey
mm,
that I was being asked to go on. So
yeah.
if you want to dive back,
No,
I
and I
think.
think I think that's the thing. It is, as we said before, it's those little things that you find that stick. And then you find the next one that sticks, and it becomes that cumulative process until, and we talk about it a lot in kinesiology, reactivity becomes less and less, and responsiveness increases. Responsibility, having the ability to respond.
Mhm.
And that is a beautiful place to be. I've been in arguments with my partner where I'm like, hang on a minute, this isn't about us. And I will say to him, this is my stuff. I'm really sorry. And we'll step out of it. So we can do it in the moment, or I certainly can. But again, I recognize it. This isn't about you. I'm pissed about something else. So let's actually not go further down this path because it's not your stuff to deal with, it's mine. And I shouldn't be taking it out on you. I use the example of resentment. I come in from work after a long day, everyone else is on their screens. And I'm like, oh, it's all right for everyone else, isn't it? They all get to be on their computer screens and I've got to go and make dinner. And now I catch myself going, okay, you're the best cook in the house. You know that nobody else puts as much care and attention into the food. And you also know that if you really wanted to, you could take time now and sit down, and everyone else would just have to wait an extra 10 or 20 minutes for their dinner. Or they could, get in the kitchen and start preparing it. And in that moment, I am then in choice. Do I choose to go sit down or do I choose to do dinner? Now, most of the time, I'll choose to go and do dinner. And the reason is that then I can sit down after dinner and not have to get back up unless I really want to. And I then know that, there's the love and care and attention that gets put into the food. But it's about catching that resentment and understanding that resentment is part of the envy family. So knowing that I'm envious of them sitting down and, doing what they want to. Whereas before, that would have become a massive drama for the entire evening because I'd have been, walking around and kicking the cat, as they say, and, grumpy, grumpy. Whereas now I'm going, you know what, I made a choice. And my partner always offers to help me with dinner. Don't get me wrong. I just often say, no, I'm good. Because again, once I get to that point of choosing to do dinner, it's almost like this place where I can just tune everything else out. So I don't like that distraction. Just leave me in the kitchen. Let me do it on my own. You go do your thing. I'll call you when it's ready. because it's almost then I use that as that decompression time. And so it's noticing things like that and being able to catch it sooner. And also then while I'm, often cooking dinner, it will be, so why am I feeling resentful tonight? What is it that I've not done for myself that is allowing me to feel this way? How have I not looked after myself? What have I not done? And so it also then becomes that self inquiry of what has led me to this place. And
Yeah.
that's fascinating as well.
Yes, I love that. And I love how you said that responsibility is the ability to respond.
Yeah.
Because if your nervous system is so dysregulated, then it becomes your, and see, now I don't want to use the word responsibility here, but it becomes
Mm,
it becomes necessary for
mm,
you to recognize that your nervous system is
yeah.
dysregulated so that you can develop that ability to have a
Mm,
choice.
yeah.
Because if I recall you correctly, when you're share, you expressed that it felt like you were dying. And
Mm,
that's how it can feel when you are so dysregulated. And it, even sending an email can feel like the grandest task in the entire world.
mm,
And yes, it is your necessary responsibility to
mm,
recognize that at some point, in
yeah.
if you desire to lead a life
Mm,
that you love and that serves and that allows you to be as extraordinary as you want to
mm,
be. That's the
yeah.
important stuff, right? So
Mm.
this has been
And
such a
it's not, we're not special creatures for having done it. We've just put in the work. And
exactly.
it is work. It is hard. There are times I've rung my girlfriend and gone, "Can I get off the journey now?" And she said, and she'll say, "Do you really want to?" And I'm like, "Oh, no." But, you know, no, I don't really want to. But also I do because it's really hard. Like I don't always want to look at that stuff. But again, I think this is where all of that, clever marketing about hacking your nervous system and everything is just a big load of BS because you can't hack your nervous system. You need to create safety. You need to create strong boundaries. You need to create self trust. You need to be able to act on your intuition. You need to be able to recognize those patterns. And without that help and support, the change is not going to happen.
Or it will be a longer way
Mm,
to it, at least
yeah.
for sure. Instead of hacking your nervous system, it's quickly developing the tools so that you can regulate
Yeah.
and feel safe in order to, right?
Yeah. But it's finding without understanding the trauma underneath it that is creating that lack of safety, which is, it can be a big process.
Hmm.
For me to develop safety from the very first few sessions was probably 3 or 4 years because I couldn't do it even through the divorce process. I had a year of sessions before I even, or not quite a year of sessions before I separated, and then the divorce was 2 years. So it was almost 2.5, 3 years before I got to a place where I actually was able to develop some semblance of safety within myself.
Mm-hmm.
It's not always a quick and easy process. And so it can take time. And then you've got to think about all of those years of conditioning. So I had one client come in having issues with blood pressure medication and all of this stuff. And she had one session and her blood pressure was amazing for about a week. She didn't. And then she came in, 3 months later, says, "My blood pressure okay now?" I'm like, okay, you've got 60 plus years of trauma sitting in your body, and you expect me to sort it in 2 1-hour sessions. I hate to say it, you're delusional. That's delusion. That is wishful thinking, and that is you not wanting to put in the work. And that's not to be rude, but I think there is this thing of everybody wants that quick fix. They want to take the pill, they want the quick fix. This isn't a quick fix, but the changes are insane. They
Mm-hmm.
are beyond comprehension. When I look back at what my life was, I used to look for all of those examples how I was not, you know, meeting the standard expected of me, how I was failing. And the voice in my head was disgusting about myself. I was my own biggest abuser by far.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at that and you compare it to, you know, even 2 years ago, I was rarely nasty to myself in my head. I was even less nasty to myself speaking out loud. I had recognized all of these patterns. I had created a place where I knew that I would keep myself safe, that I would not allow these dangerous and abusive relationships into my life anymore, that I was prepared to make really hard decisions to keep people who are not safe for me out of my life. And but I needed that time of unpacking to then be able to put all of that stuff together, to be able to work it out. You know, for people to say create boundaries, I don't believe you can do that without understanding what your trauma is and
Mm-hmm.
why you've created the kind of boundaries that you have.
I had a beautiful exposure to this within the last week,
Mm,
actually, about boundaries and how standards
yeah.
actually need to come before boundaries,
Yeah.
because a standard allows you to actually deem that you're worthy enough. And if you are stuck in the trauma, then you likely
Mm,
feel like you're not worthy of very much at
yeah.
all. And so when you then try to create boundaries from that place, there's almost a disconnect of like, well,
Mm,
you're not valuing yourself. And so how can
yeah.
you expect other people to value you? And it creates
Mm,
this energetic melting
yeah.
butter effect, essentially. Like it
Mm,
becomes like a soup of just
yeah.
misery.
Oh, absolutely. And
Yeah.
and you know, I recognize that in my own life because I had really high standards and I tried to get people to hold up with them. But when you have a deep-seated insecurity and that other person knows it, they they don't care that that's your boundary. They'll just walk straight over it and rape and pillage your village until there's nothing left. And often you're the one standing in the corner going, yeah, take that. I don't need that. Here, have my kidney. You know, like,
Oh my
okay.
goodness.
And you sort of back into a corner and go, here, help yourself. Because you don't have that self worth to say, no, this is my area, get out.
Hmm.
This is not where you belong. And if you can't respect that, there are consequences. And that's the reason most people suck at boundaries, is because they're not prepared to put in the consequences for people violating those boundaries.
Hmm.
And I think that has been one of the biggest things that I have done. There are consequences. And often it comes with less access to me because, hang on, you're not safe. You're not safe to be around me. So therefore, I ring you less, or I speak to you less, or I see you less, or eventually I just don't ring you at all because I'm not prepared to put up with that. And that was that safety within myself. I remember when I was trying to find my partner, safety was at the top of the list. This person needs to make me feel safe. But as soon as I had that knowledge of safety within me, that I was not going to allow anybody else to make me feel unsafe or to threaten my safety, I didn't need safety on the list anymore
Mm.
because I was creating that for myself.
Beautiful.
Mm.
Oh, I love that. Yes. There's so much here. I feel like my mind is
I know.
moving a mile a minute. And I did hear at one point my
Mm.
perception of what could be a collective sigh of like, oh, I have to do the work. What
Yeah.
about the quantum leaps and the quick fixes, right? And what I wanted to say with respect to that is the work can be fun. So
Yeah.
you can reprogram yourself to deeply enjoy the process of unfolding in this way.
Mm.
And so I found like a lot of people don't want to touch the work because it's almost conditioned to be
Because it's
perceived
called
as
the work.
is called the work. Yes, exactly. So it's fun. It's, at least it's for me, it's been titillating and like, and it's an
Mm.
exuberant journey of colorful experiences that
Mm.
blow my mind
Yeah.
left, right, and center. And then my life, when I look back upon it, standing where I am right now, and then I imagine
Mm.
moving forward as well, I can actually say I have a really deep, fulfilling, and impactful experiences of moving through a lot of this stuff.
Yes.
And now being at the plane that I'm finding myself on, having the resources to
Mm.
continue to move forward, I'm excited for, and to mirror your words, that continual growth and expansion.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's a beautiful thing. I mentioned some of the hard bits because it's not always sunshine and roses and unicorns and all of that stuff. It it can be challenging, for me to recognize that I was my own biggest abuser for a lot of my marriage. That's hard. That is hard to come to terms with. And also, as soon as that settled, I was like, I'm in full control of this. Oh my God, this is amazing. And it is so empowering. And you're right, some of the magical and mystical experiences I have had on this path are the rainbows and the unicorns and the quantum leaps and I remember one meditation where I honestly believed I was in Vipassana, which is a 10-day silent meditation retreat. And people were like, you silent for 10 days. And I'm like, actually, yes, it's going to be divine. And I loved it. God, I thought it was amazing. But I remember at one point going, I reckon if anyone looked back right now, they would just see my legs on a cushion. Like I felt like from my hips up, I was just energy and my body was just buzzing. And I honestly thought if people looked at me in that moment that they would only see my legs on the cushion, because I felt like that top part of me was just pure energy and no matter. And so there are magical, incredible experiences that we have throughout it. And that, I believe, is what keeps us going through those darker times, through those challenges. And I describe it like those tapestries you hang on the wall. And actually, I mentioned it in one of the videos I did just the other day, on one of my sites. People come in and they say, "Oh, I want to be happy." Well, to me, happiness is one dimensional. It is one of the hundreds of emotions that we feel. It is like having, a beige tapestry hanging in your wall, and you go, "Oh, yeah, that's nice." But we want the color and the depth and the highlights and the dark and the shadows and because that's what makes it beautiful. That is what makes us want to be able to step inside our life, is having that texture. February for me was a really challenging month. My partner had to go to New Zealand because his mum was very sick and we did not think she was going to make it. It was really challenging. And, through all of that, the way I responded, the way that I was able to support him, the way I was able to hold space, the way I was able to not judge and to not give advice and to just be there, is like I have never been able to do before.
Mhm.
And that has come because, yeah, I was feeling the grief. I was feeling the fear. I was feeling the anger at, the reason she was there. I was all of this stuff. And also, there was a peace and a certainty and a calmness. And to be able to hold all of that at the same time is magical. And I think that's the thing that we learn, is we don't need to just aim for happiness. Happiness is like, yeah, great. But if you think about, even just on your computer, where you've got you black, you white, you grayscale, and all of these different Pantone colors and hex charts and whatever else you got, color things on there. If you just pick yellow, and only one shade of yellow, by the way, because let's face it, happiness is one shade of emotion, how much are you missing out on if that is your one goal? And yes, my baseline of happiness has increased astronomically. But I would say that more than that, I have contentment and peace.
Mhm.
And so that when any emotion comes at me, the deepest grief and the most joyous joys, it can sit within my body so much more comfortably because my nervous system isn't primed with all of this past baggage and trauma that I'm holding on to. So there's space for all this stuff within me.
Mhm.
And that's the beauty of it. So there is magic and mystery and wonder and awe. And, even when I walk the dog on the beach every morning, I'm there. Rain, hail, shine. The other day was windy as hell. It was like 50-kilometer-an-hour winds. And it was so hard walking up the beach. And I was going, oh, the journey home will be fun, And it was. It was so much easier walking back because the wind was behind me instead of, trudging into it. But even in that, I was going, oh my God, compared to, I think it was the day before or 2 days before that, where the bay was like glass. It
Wow.
was so calm and smooth, and we had the big wide beach, you know, compared to the waves being right up at, we had only a couple of meters of beach as opposed to 20 or 30 meters of beach. It was complete chalk and cheese. But for me to be able to see the beauty in both of those,
Mhm.
now, going back a couple of years, I wouldn't have gone out in that kind of weather. Oh no, I'll just go tomorrow. It'll be fine. Now
Mhm.
I'll go and I'll just enjoy being there. And
Mhm.
that shows the different lenses that you look through when you can hold that nuance of different emotion, the paradox of competing emotions within your body comfortably at the same time.
That is so beautiful and so well said. For me,
Mm.
I think when people are asking about happiness, they really are trying to have the experience of fulfillment, of
Yes.
living authentically as they are with
Yeah.
the permission, can I be me? Yes. Please,
Yeah.
please learn to be you.
Yes. We need
Please.
you.
We
Yeah.
need you. Yes.
Yeah.
So I find astrology and human design and all of those modalities of
Mm,
blueprinting your energy can really help with that
yeah.
validation as well. um but yeah, it's not about happiness. I love the way that you put that. You are so
Yeah.
articulate, so well spoken. My goodness, giggled when
It
you
is a
said you did it.
lot of years of, of needing to go there. And I think, and it's interesting what we need to laugh at this. We need to laugh through this. The number of times I have had the most devastating awarenesses, and the absurdity of it has made me laugh. Like finding out I was my own biggest abuser. He could have thrown anything at me and I would have accepted it thinking I deserved it because I thought I was an absolute piece of crap.
Hmm.
Oh, he could have thrown anything at me and I accepted it because my internal abuse was worse than his. And once I realized it, yeah, that's devastating. That is hard to accept. That is hard to acknowledge. And yet, the absurdity of it is hilarious. It's like, you are kidding me. Seriously? As much as I do believe we can be victims of circumstance, I know that we welcome in all these life experiences and all of that, but we can also be victims of circumstance. I don't believe that, as much as I know I was my own biggest abuser, I still didn't deserve what was thrown at me. Both things are true. I allowed it to happen to an extent in the fact that, you know, even one day I was driving down the road, I can still see where I was. I was on this, 4-lane highway, and I almost stopped my car because it was like that awareness hit me full on. I was like, I knew where the door was all along. I could have walked out any day of that 14-year marriage,
Hmm.
any day. That door was not locked. I could have gone out it. I
Hmm.
chose to stay. I don't know which part of me chose to stay some days, but there was a choice to stay because that door was never locked.
Hmm.
And yes, I was worried about my safety and there were all those sorts of things. But I think having those kind of realizations, like I say, they hit you like a brick and sometimes they feel like a punch in the guts. But as you start to recognize that there's this power and freedom, and you recognize the absurdity of it, and you
Hmm.
can then laugh at it. Oh my God, I chose that. What is going on? And that can be the beauty in it. So I love that you pick up the laughter because I think it's so important. Otherwise, it does feel like work. And it does feel like I don't want to do that work.
Depends on the day.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, it
Yes.
does.
This has been such a beautiful conversation. We
Oh,
are about that time. So
yeah.
I do want to say that if you are loving the vibe of Amanda Kate, then you can find all of her contact information in the show notes. And Amanda, I do want to offer you like the final, advice or nugget or piece that you would like to offer our audience in this collective conversation we're having right now.
I think it goes down to that subtitle of my book, which is prioritizing internal truth over external influence. And I think the fact is, we all have the answers that we need for us within ourselves. And so the more we can turn down that external noise and tune into that, the easier our life becomes and the more congruently we can live. So, yeah, thank you so much. And thank you for bringing your light and work and smile and gorgeousness to the world because we so need you. So, yeah, love you,
Aw.
love you, love you, love you.
Love you back. My goodness. I'm like blushing now. Caught off guard a little bit. Ooh, ooh. This has been such a pleasure and such a lovely conversation and messy. I know that you call yourself the messy human. And
Divine, messy
so
human.
the divine messy human. Yes, I forgot the divinity. We cannot forget
Yes.
the divinity. The divine
No, we
messy
need that
human.
bit.
I love how um, there was messiness today with our
Mm,
little tech faux pas and just the beautiful weaving again that word of joining our energies together in this collective conversation. So with that, I'm going to bid you adieu, and
yeah.
to our audience, until next time.